We are live. Happy Thursday, everyone. Thursday is Backdrop Day, so we're excited to be working on Backdrop today. Backdrop, for those of you who don't know, is a content management system that's specifically intended for small to medium-sized business, nonprofits, educations, basically not the enterprise. So anyone who has a significant budget or concern about ongoing costs of maintenance of their website, this should be a more affordable alternative than Drupal 7.
And Drupal
We are
8.
hoping to build, sorry, what was that?
Then Drupal 8.
Also than Drupal 7.
Oh,
But
okay.
yes.
All right. Sure. Yeah, I would go with that. Sorry. Carry on.
All right, so we are trying to build a system that has comparable features to Drupal 8, but on an architecture that is more similar to Drupal 7. So anyone who's already on Drupal 7 should have an easy upgrade path, from Drupal 7 to Backdrop, significantly easier than the path from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, and hopefully we'll end up creating a system that is easier to maintain than Drupal 7 long term. So also by definition easier to maintain than Drupal 8. But we'll see how that goes since Drupal 8 isn't done yet. It's hard to compare to that. It's pretty easy to compare to Drupal 7, so that's why I chose 7. We are going to be doing a bunch of things while we're creating this system that include fixing bugs. So bugs that exist in Drupal 7, bugs that exist in Drupal 8, bugs that we create or find ourselves, we'll also be fixing those. And we're also, when possible, going to be try to simplify existing systems. So things that were hard for people to learn or hard for people to maintain or hard for people to work with in Drupal 7 should be simplified. And new features should still be added within those restrictions. And those last two things, of simplifying existence and adding new features, can only be done without modifying APIs too much. So we want the system to be as similar to Drupal 7 as possible, but of course we'd like to still be able to add new features, so adding new APIs is fine, and simplifying things with the least amount of changing APIs as possible. Our timeline, we're hoping to have Backdrop CMS released this fall, which technically gives us until December. So we're shooting for a release date of December 2014, which is very soon. It's a month away about. So we have a couple of things we need to get done before then, but we're looking pretty good in terms of meeting that release date. And we've got a couple of, we'll go through those in a minute. But after we release 1.0.0, which will be this fall or this December or in 1 month, we'll continue to issue releases on a regular basis. So we'll probably have one release every quarter, and in those future releases we'll be able to schedule, we're going to have X release on X date, and it's going to contain Y features. And then that way we'll be able to continue to improve the software. Even though it's out, it won't be done. That will hopefully give us a chance to continually iterate and improve over time. We're, of course, not going to be breaking major APIs in those small changes. We'll be able to do that with major releases. We'll be able to add things. So if we don't have a Drupal 8 comparable system at release, that's fine. We can add modules. We can add functionality as time goes on. What we do need to get done before we release are a couple of major projects that we've been working on for the last few months here in Backdrop land. The first and most significant is CMI. This is a solution that allows people to build new features on a different environment and then deploy those. For the longest time, we've had one module that's allowed us to do that, and that's featured module in Drupal 7. And it's something that's been frustrating to work with, hard to maintain, and very time-consuming. And both Drupal 8 and Backdrop have solved this problem by using configuration management tools, putting them in. And we've gotten ours in Backdrop. We've got a couple of systems that need to be converted. And Nate, you've been doing a lot of work on that lately. Do you want to give us an update on where CMI stands?
Yeah, it's been an exciting ride for the past month or so for CMI land. We converted all of the major systems, or almost all of the major systems, in the past couple of months. In the last week, we got the most daunting one remaining converted, languages. So languages, like the configuration of languages, as well as date and time formats that go along with them. Some of that was already done, but now it's all comprehensively included. So if you configure a new language or configure the negotiation settings, it's all stored in config now as well. We've got and it was also a really great week in terms of getting all of our remaining variables done. We're almost 100% variable free, but not quite. There's one left in the whole system, and it's the mail system variable, which is kind of a little bit of a gnarly one. It's very unusual. It looks like when Drupal 8 did its conversion, at least that's what I was just looking through, they just ported it over pretty directly, which is probably what we'll end up doing as well.
Config or state?
Mail system is config.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the only one that's left, and we'll probably get that done this week, no problem. And then we have 3 other systems remaining: menus, text formats, and actions. Menus, we're only going to worry about storing the actual menu itself, not its structure, because right now, at least, menu links are still in the database, and they'll probably stay that way during release or during initial release. Text format should be really straightforward. Actions should be pretty easy, but a little bit weird, just because actions are just really bizarre the way they're set up now. So that'll require a little bit of reworking. But it's looking really good. Like overall, we've just got these 3 things left. We're currently at the pace of converting 1 or 2 systems per week. So we should be in pretty good shape to get this done, a couple weeks before our intended release date. But yeah, it's close for sure.
That's great. Other things we've been working on in Backdrop that are super important are our blocks and layout system. This is the one thing that we have that Drupal 8 doesn't have, so we're particularly proud of it. We've replaced the system in Drupal 7, which had this concept of one layout for your entire site. And if you want to change the layout, you have to do something really special with how you place blocks on some pages but not on others, and there were some extreme limitations to the way that worked. We've solved that problem by basically taking panels, putting it in Backdrop, and writing an entirely new user interface for it, because the thing most people hate about panels is its user interface. It's a very powerful tool. Some of us really love it, but it is fairly hard to use. So we rewrote the user interface and put that in pretty much straight across, just ported it to Backdrop, and we're super excited to have that going. There's a video that we've posted on our YouTube channel if anyone wants to see a demo of that. We've also done a couple of demos at recent conferences at Badcamp. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we were demoing blocks and layouts, and the crowd erupted spontaneously into applause, which is not something that we'd experienced before, so that was pretty exciting. But yeah, we've got the blocks and layout system in Backdrop. We've got a couple of follow-up tasks. As of last week, I think we've confirmed these are not release blocking follow-up tasks. They all can be done without API change. So I think that we'll worry about getting those done after we get 1.0 out, which is great. Other things we've got going on, we've moved the views module into core. This is something Drupal 8 did also. Views is the #1 downloaded contributed module for Drupal. It allows you to basically build lists of anything. It's a dynamic query builder. We've got it in Backdrop. We've got some things that would be nice to have as views, like the node listing, for example, on your front page. And we've got some people working on building those views for us. I think we're missing a couple of upgrade paths. That is also something I think could probably go in after release, so those aren't release blockers. But yeah, we're working on getting those done, which is great. And then, of course, we'll be, after we get it out and we get people using this, we'll also be accepting ideas of like what other things we should be doing in views that we aren't now. So hopefully we'll get those going. We've got some other stuff that we're working on that's also super important for getting the release out, and that is primarily making sure that all of the security issues that have been fixed in Drupal 7 have also been fixed in Backdrop. And we have, I think, 3 left that have been solved in Drupal 7 and not yet in Backdrop. There's a new one that came out this week that Nate just added for us to the agenda that we need to worry about. And then we've got I don't know what the other one is, but the last one was this image generation potential issue that we did not like the solution that went into Drupal 7, so we need to come up with something a little more elegant for Backdrop. But that issue's been open for a while. We've gotten a bunch of feedback on it. I'm not sure there's actually a decision about which way we should go on that one, but we'll need to revisit that before release 2 and get something in so that we're not at least behind where Drupal 7 is. And then we've got a bunch of other stuff that's been committed to Drupal 7 recently that's not security related, and these are not release blockers, but it would be nice if we could at least make sure that Backdrop is not behind where Drupal 7 stands. So if we could get someone to apply the Drupal 7 patches to Backdrop where possible and get as many of those in as possible, that would be great. But again, if we are missing a couple of really recent features to Drupal 7, it wouldn't be the end of the world. And most of those, I think, are bug fixes, and we could do them after release anyway. Since these all happened to Drupal 7 after release, I'm not sure there's much in there that's an API change, but it would be good to take a look anyway. Some other stuff that we're working on is backporting the things we care most about from Drupal 8. And we started off by doing this by looking at all of the commits that went to Drupal 8 and trying to decide one at a time if we wanted them or not. But there were thousands and thousands of commits, and that got to be too time-consuming, considering how much time we had left to work on it. So we've looked at all those issues and kind of picked out several categories that we wanted to look at. Like, we want to make sure we have all the correct HTML5 elements, and we want to make sure that we have cleaner JavaScript code and stuff like that. And so we've got these subsets of things that we've decided that we care about. If we don't get all of the same HTML5 elements that Drupal 8 has, I think that will be fine. We've got most of them right now. There were a few that went into Drupal 8 that created some significant problems and introduced some critical bugs that we have not yet merged because we want those problems to be solved before we introduce them in the Backdrop. Since our release date is much sooner, we've got to have solution to those problems before we can release, so we might as well not introduce the problems in the first place. So I think we're actually looking pretty good with that list. There's 3 left. I'll check up on those and see how we're coming, but they might just have to wait until we have time to either solve the problems ourselves or help Drupal 8 along with getting those problems solved so we can move forward in both products. We've got a bunch of minor things too we're also working on that are also not release blockers. One of them is design related, and we've started having a fortnightly Backdrop design meeting where we have someone who's interested in heading up all of our design efforts, and he's been really great in helping us create design guidelines and human interface guidelines and brand guidelines and a bunch of stuff that's really important for us to have. So we've separated that off into a separate meeting. But I do want to mention the most important thing that we're working on related to design right now is getting our style guide for the back-end theme done. I don't think there's going to be a lot in there that's going to require API change, but it would be great if we could at least know where we were going before we release. So if there was something that required rewriting theme functions in order to get intended markup, we could at least have that, know this either needs to get done before release or it's not getting done. So that would be good. We had a couple of people volunteer to work on the style guide, but it hasn't worked out for any of them yet to get the time to actually do it. And we are coming up on release. So if anyone's watching this and they're super interested in helping with that, there's 2 major things that need to be done. We need to have someone look at the existing style guide and say, this is not what it should look like, it should look different. And you can either do that in words or you can do that in Photoshop or whatever design language you're used to speaking to tell us what it should look like. That's important. And then the other thing would be if we had someone who can actually write HTML and CSS and work on the GitHub project that contains our style guide code. That's another place where we could use help. So if you don't have HTML, CSS skills, but you're good in Photoshop, we can use you. We need direction on what this thing should look like. And then if you do have HTML and CSS skills, maybe in addition to that design skill or maybe separate, we could use your help there too in helping us make Backdrop feel different than Drupal. So we've got some ideas, we just don't have anyone working on that right now. So not a release blocker, but it would be nice if we could get that done soon. Other things we're working on, we've got a giant issue for theme system cleanup. This was on hold until we got layouts done, which has been done, and then I haven't been working on it recently. We're running out of time, so I think probably the only thing we're going to be able to get done in terms of that is removing the process layer, which will also involve changing the way our template files work a little bit so that we can call PHP functions directly from template files, whereas before we didn't use to do that. So it'll be a little change in how the template system works, like how you think about using it, in addition to how it is, what the APIs look like. And then we've got some other things we'd like to work on, like user experience improvements, and a lot of these can come after release too. So making sure the terminology makes sense. We're not going to be able to change the names of any modules like taxonomy, obviously, but we will be able to rename links and stuff like that. So if we have terminology updates that are super important, we can do them after release. If they aren't super important, they'll wait until the next version of Backdrop, which is fine. Things like adding a rich text editor, I think that is super important, but it can also be done without breaking APIs. So that's something that we're pushing back until after release. And there's a bunch of other stuff we're working on too, like establishing some guidelines for building user interfaces. And once we have guidelines established, we'll be able to kind of methodically go through and update parts of core to match those guidelines. A lot of that can be done after release. Some of it may require API change, and we'll do as good a job as we can for this first version of Backdrop. But I think it's more important that we get it out and then we get something working and we start working on contrib than it is that we get it perfect. That's kind of the difference between the way things go in Backdrop and the way things go in Drupal. We like to make it a little better. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it's better, that's improvement. So we'll work on perfect later, but for now, we'll just get it done. And then we've got a bunch of stuff that could use a little review. So if you don't have time to write any code or you aren't interested in working on GitHub, but you want to do a review of what we've got, you can check out the project and just kind of look at the code for us and tell us, oh, your CSS file is in the wrong location, or you're identifying things with IDs where it should be classes. We could use some help with a thorough CSS review and a markup review for the new layouts that we put in core. Right now there's 3 layouts in core. There's potential for adding more in the future, but we'll probably ship with only 3. Having those 3 reviewed to make sure that we're not doing anything front-enders will dislike greatly would be super helpful. So if you want to look at the template files for those layouts and point out things that you think might be improved, that could be useful as well. So that's what we're working on for Backdrop the product. There are a ton of issues on GitHub that could use some attention if you want to take a look at it. I think you can look for anything that's tagged with 1.0.0. Those are the things that we would like to get done for the first release. If it's tagged with bug, we definitely need help with that. We'd like to get all those bugs, or as many as those bugs resolved as possible. But if you are also worried about your prowess as a developer, there's also a tag for novice. So if you just want to contribute a little bit and you want to grab something easy and knock it off the list, that should give you some ways to find issues that could be good places for you to work on. We have a section in this meeting to relay updates from the project management committee. We haven't really had a lot of escalated issues yet in our process because we haven't really had that many people who are complaining about things yet, which is good. So we don't have any updates this week, but we are retaining this place for future updates that need to be made. There's a bunch of other stuff we're working on as well as Backdrop CMS, the product. Including backdropcms.org, the website. We are starting to think about getting a new design and a new theme done for that. Obviously less important than the software itself, but having someone working on it will help us get closer to being a legitimate CMS tool, which is great. We also have a need for an update server, so we're probably not going to get that done before we release the software, but we do have a plan for making sure that your Backdrop website will not get a garbage message when it tries to check an update server, and then we'll be able to build the update server after the fact. So we'll be able to start collecting some data as soon as we can on who's running Backdrop and what they're doing with it, which should be useful. And then we also would like to create a GitHub Service. This is something that will allow you to register modules and themes you've written on GitHub as being for Backdrop, and having that association there will allow the backdropcms.org primary website to aggregate a list of all of the modules and themes that are available for Backdrop. So that's also super important, but we need to get a product first, and then we can get some contrib, and then we can aggregate the contrib. So less important than getting our product out. We also have, let's see, we've got an API website, and I think this is probably the most important of all of these things, because as soon as Backdrop CMS comes out, the product, we're going to have people who are going to start porting modules from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. And in order to do that, they're going to need a list of what's been changed in Backdrop. And we have a place for that on the API website. We have a place for change records that just hasn't been fully populated yet. So I think of the things that we're working on that aren't the product, getting our API site updated with a current list of change records is going to be the most important. So we'll start working on that as soon as possible. I know we've gotten a couple of people who volunteered to do it, but it doesn't look like any of them are actually getting the time we hoped. hopefully we'll be able to focus on that here pretty soon so that people can see that. And then other things that we're working on, I guess today, after this meeting, we'll have a little sprint here in IRC. If we're people who are interested in working on Backdrop have questions on how to do things, you can ping Nate or I directly in there. You can also tweet at us or send us an email. We got a bunch of great responses last week after the meeting with people who wanted to help with various things. So any way you can think to contact us, we're here to help. At least short term, we can help you as much as we can possibly manage. And we will have some more in real life sprint dates upcoming, probably starting next year. So between now and release, we'll all be just working remotely on getting things done. But we'll try and help people as much as possible. We can do Skype calls if that's beneficial to help get people on board. I offered that last week. Or we can just chat in IRC or on Twitter, however else. We've got some pretty good resources to send you to if you want to get involved. So, upcoming events. We are going to be next week in Madrid at Symphony Live, which is a big conference that they have there every year. I think this is their second annual one. We're going to be talking about large open source communities, not necessarily Backdrop in particular, but kind of what happens when your community grows, things that you need to be aware of, things that you need to work hard to solve. And I think that, obviously part of the reason the Backdrop is here is because Drupal grew in a direction that we felt was leaving some people behind. So I think it would be good to talk to a growing, budding open source community about how that happened and maybe how they need to think about things going forward, or things maybe they don't care, I don't know. But it'll be good to raise these issues anyway and say, this is what happened to us, and see what they think. That's all I have for this meeting. Nate, I don't know if you wanted to give any particular updates this week. I know you've been working like crazy.
No, I don't think so. Things just kind of rolling along. I'm feeling really good about where config is and that we can probably complete it. There's a number of pull requests that people had submitted that get started on converting some views, which is great. But I think where those last stood was that they didn't include any kind of upgrade to like turn on those views. If you had previously placed a block, for example, of recent comments, we need to make sure that block is replaced with a view. Okay. And I don't think that works correctly yet. So, I mean, all of those views conversions, that would be really nice to have done, but I mean, we can do them at any time after the release, really, because the current system is so limited, you can't really modify it in any way. So if we replace it with a view, we're just adding more flexibility. So I don't think that would be a holdup for later releases.
Okay.
So anyway, that's just where we are. There's a number of pull requests that are out there that I'm working through reviewing, but a lot of them are definitely, they still need work.
All right. Well, I'll probably spend a little bit of time going through the pull request queue today and just see if there's anything in there that needs some attention.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to leave any that are ready to be merged.
Okay.
And there may be some that are in there that are actually good to go.
Okay. So I'll go through there and I'll send them to you if they look like they're ready to be merged, and then you can do a more thorough review. And yeah, hopefully that'll help get us a little closer. I'd also like to work on some of the Drupal 7 issues, like either the latest security issue or some of the, we could close out that issue for up to 731. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be
so
great.
So we can get that done today.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, well, thanks for coming, Doug, and thank you everyone else for watching. We've got like a record number of viewers right now, so that's kind of exciting. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out to Nate and I on Twitter. I'm Jen Lampton, Nate is Quick Sketch, or you can just tweet at Backdrop CMS, and we'll be able to notice and respond that way. If necessary, our IRC channel is #Backdrop if you want to actually chat with us directly, or email is a good resource too. So thank you all for coming and watching, and thank you all for watching in the future. We won't know who's not watching live. But yeah, we will. I think as of right now, I'm planning on doing this meeting next week, but I don't know what time it will be in Europe. So I'll confirm that, and then we may end up postponing next week's meeting if it ends up being a ridiculous hour of night or morning or something like that. So we'll figure it out. We'll post it on Twitter.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining or watching.
Bye.
All right, bye guys.